So the Star Wars original trilogy in its pre-special edition form has been very highly sought after for a very long time, and has a very nuanced home video history. I'd like to take you through a little bit of it right now. So Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi were three films that just lit the world on fire, taking home multiple Oscars for groundbreaking visual effects, sound design, and music. The trilogy was just a pop culture phenomenon. So much so that the original Star Wars film at the time was the highest grossing film ever released. And bolstered by multiple theatrical re-releases, it still maintained it as one of the most popular and successful franchises of the time. Now, as the 1980s start to creep in here, you get the advent of home video with formats such as VHS, Betamax, and Laserdisc starting to stake their claim in an ever-widening market, a market that Star Wars had never become a very in-demand thing to be part of. Now, as you get right before Return of the Jedi here in 1982, the original Star Wars gets its debut on all these different formats. Betamax, unfortunately, gets only mono audio here, but VHS and Laserdisc do get hi-fi stereo sound, but a little bit before Laserdisc started getting digital audio. It's still just analog. So you're getting all this stuff, but it's pan and scan, so all analog stuff, but at least people are able to get it. First on the rental market from Fox Video, but then a couple months later, it started getting out on the retail market. You actually go off and buy the thing. But as you go along, and you have a lot of things where it's like, okay, first it's Fox Video, then they kind of like merge over with CBS, so it's not CBS Fox Video until pretty much the end of the 80s into just a little bit of the early 90s there. So things get a little bit kind of like re-released, repackaged, whatnot, with the new logos, the new distribution, marketing, and all that type of stuff. But in 1984, Betamax does get a stereo version of the original Star Wars released, and The Empire Strikes Back also makes its VHS and Betamax debuts, both with stereo sound. And the film makes its Laserdisc debut with a CLV extended play version in 84, followed by a CAV standard play version of that and the original Star Wars in 1985. Still is pan scan, still analog audio, but at least it's marked as like stereo surround. So if you probably had a surround system at the time, you could maybe properly do a proper like matrixed surround sound experience with it. That kind of brings me up to a little bit of a thing, is that the original Star Wars trilogy did have multiple theatrical audio mixes. Original Star Wars was one of the groundbreaking things that it had Dolby Stereo at the time. And the fact is, not all theatrical screenings could actually equip itself with stereo sound at the time, so also had to make a mono mix at the time. But also it screened in 70mm with 6-track stereo sound, so there are 3 different theatrical mixes for the original Star Wars, and Empire and Jedi also had regular Dolby Stereo and also the 6-track 70mm thing, so there were slight differences. Like C-3PO's line in the first Star Wars where he's talking about the tractor beam and how to disable it, that was only in the original mono mix of the entire thing. But it gets moved back into everything when you get in the 1985 remix. Ben Burtt, one of the sound engineers of the entire trilogy, actually went in for the home video releases to kind of like tweak the sound design a little bit. Especially for the first Star Wars, where they were a little bit conservative on the still Dolby Stereos, like, we don't want to push it too far. We still want to make it a little bit accessible, especially when it goes out on television screenings and stuff like that. People don't have as much of a great sound system or something like that. Still want to keep a little conservative in how much we're really going with the dynamic stuff in the different channels. Ben Burtt decided, well, we're going to go off and kind of just tweak it a little bit, and add it into being a bit of a wider space, throw some different things around here. They're mostly faithful to the original mixes from the Dolby Stereo stuff, but a few minor things a little bit changed around a little bit here and there, but things get a lot more involved in other releases we get on later on down the line here. But this leads us into 1986, where we do get Return of the Jedi. Gets its format debut and the first one of the trilogy in US Laserdisc format to get PCM digital stereo sound. But Japan was much more further ahead on this whole thing and released both pan and scan and the first widescreen letterbox editions of the entire trilogy on Laserdisc, all with stereo digital sound. Now, the special collection has been like the gold standard for a lot of people on Laserdisc for the original trilogy pre-special edition. And certainly people who even don't like the special editions, still stuff like that. But regardless, I don't have these versions, unfortunately, because I've seen them go for like $250 as a set on eBay. They're very highly sought after, not hard to find, but you're going to hike up a lot of money to actually obtain these things, but they're said to be very, very good. Very strong colors, vibrant qualities, very good stereo mixes. As I said, Ben Burke went in, did some tinkering here and there to make them a little richer in some places here and there, and just make them a little more lively in the entire left-right stereo type of things going on. So a little bit of a different mix in a certain way, but it still brought a lot more to the table than you ever got before. And this is certainly a thing that like a lot of people are like trying to import so much. They just want these so much. Widescreen, digital sound. You couldn't beat it at the time. It was actually the pinnacle of what you'd want if you're an avid Star Wars fan with a Laserdisc collection. Like some of the later things, digital processing and little things going on here and there, just like even if it might not have been truly faithful to the theatrical colors or something like that, where no one really had much of a reference for that, it was still something that was very much praised on so many different levels, of being a CAV, where you could only fit about half an hour per disc, but it maintained a much higher quality than the CLV discs, where you could fit up to an hour on it. But it didn't have as many things. Like the CAV ones, you could do still frames, you could pause it and go frame by frame type of things if you had the right player and stuff like that. So they're just like the pinnacle of the entire format there for these types of films, if you wanted them. Now, a lot of the early CLV releases actually had the film's time and compressor slightly sped up, so they run a little bit under 2 hours to fit on two sides of one disc. But all future releases after about 1985 corrected this so you'd have the right amount of size to fit in the film at this proper speed without having any weird audio pitches from the sped up version of the film. So 1986 got the original Star Wars out in the special collection Laserdisc, and the following year Empire and Jedi followed suit. So it wasn't until 1989 that CBX Fox actually kind of followed up on it and released their own widescreen letterbox versions of the original trilogy with digital audio. Now there's a lot of things to mention on this whole thing, where Empire doesn't have much of a quirk to it in any type of way. It's perfectly fine. There's no problems with it. Return of the Jedi, because of the Japanese subtitles and the alien subtitles and stuff like that, on the widescreen Laserdisc version, also the later one that you'd get on VHS, actually had the entire image shifted upwards on the screen, so it wasn't centered, it was moved up. So even though that was originally done for the Japanese ones, because they basically took them from the same masters, but not quite graded the exact same way, they just kind of left it where it was and kind of put the alien Jabba the Hutt subtitles and stuff like that below the frame, but maintained that entire composition for the entire course of the movie. But the more kind of quirky type of thing is the original Star Wars here, because they had the exact same type of thing. So like you got all the Japanese subtitles from the original master from Japan, and they tried to correct it, but they ran into certain technical snafus on the entire thing, where they tried to reposition the frame in the middle and tried to mask off all the subtitles underneath it and stuff like that, but they ran into a certain problem where as the film goes on, the black bars on the entire thing start to encompass more and more of the frame. It starts encroaching on the entire actual film frame of the movie. Now, this is a very weird type of thing that's like apparently like glossed over people like for absolute years, like years and years, until people kind of like maybe got up on like 16:9 television. It's like, well, that starts looking a little different or something like that. It caught on much, much later after the format's life to kind of catch up on this entire thing. It's like, well, that's very weird. Like the whole thing starts really kind of encroaching so much on it that it's become kind of a thing. And this lasted for a couple of years on this pressing. And it went through, I think, Pioneer Japan and Mitsubishi and a few other things here and there. It's like a couple of years. It was around for about 3 years, this entire pressing. 3 or 4 years. And the entire thing is just very strange to kind of like see this entire weird technical thing. Is like how this ended up happening. I don't really know. It's like you should have just been able to move it down and mat off the thing and hard mat it off. And like there shouldn't be no reason why the thing would be closing in from the top and bottoms like that. It was just very, very strange. But as the thing goes along, as you get this entire thing going on where you got you got things re-released and pan scan on Laserdisc in the US, now with digital audio, that happens around 1990. And this happens at the same time when you end up getting a nice pan scan VHS box set. They're also released individually, but this was the first version of Star Wars I had as a retail version, not recorded off of HBO or Showtime or stuff like that, where those tapes got well worn out over the short couple of years I had them. Parents got this for me for Christmas, and it was the one version I watched for so many years. That's all I had until I got special editions on VHS, also pan scan. But it's like, it's a really nice little box set. I like the little informational flaps on the side. This is years before you had IMDb to look up anything. Internet was several years away to get kind of interesting little tidbit facts on the whole thing. So it's like nice things about all the awards it was nominated for, the box office take, the release dates, all this stuff. It's a nice little informational packet on the whole thing, on this little flaps and whatnot. It's like it's a really nicely designed box. I like the whole thing where they got very clean artwork. It's a very good looking set all together. The slip covers, everything looks very, very nice on it. I very much praise them for doing a nice quality design for the whole thing. But you get up to 1992 here. First off is the whole thing with getting a Trilogy widescreen VHS set. Now this is a nice little thing, has this hologram on the cover, and sort of navy blue or something like that, sort of box in a certain way, but also comes with the wonderful documentary from Star Wars The Jedi, which had been available for a couple of years, I think, at that time, but it's like nice to have that in a nice box. Where you didn't get that in the pan and scan version, you only got it in the widescreen VHS version. And also on this box set, you got included an abridged version of George Lucas' The Creative Impulse, a nice book that got a little insight into his career at this point in time, but you get the much fuller hardcover version on the later Definitive Collection Laserdisc box set. But on this entire VHS set, Empire and Jedi are basically the exact same transfers from the 1999 US Laserdisc widescreen editions. But original Star Wars gets a brand new transfer. Now, I don't know if someone got wise the aspect ratio morphing situation on the previous master, but they decided to go back and redo it. And so this got on this VHS box set, and the later Technodisc Laserdisc pressing that came out around 1993, where my version that I recently got is marked 1994. This is after the Definitive Collection release actually happened, so they were pressing this for quite a bit of time. Right before the collection, that big collection was released, it still released it quite a couple months after it, from what I can tell. But the whole thing is like, okay, the aspect ratio thing's completely corrected, and the colors on this whole thing are much bolder. Like, I don't know if this is accurate towards like the special collection in any type of way, but from what I've heard from that, much stronger colors and much more organic look to everything, just much more pleasing type of thing overall. It looks really good to me. Even if you're kind of like not getting true theatrical colors, like if you go up and like look at stuff from 4K 77, the fan restoration taken from theatrical film prints and a few other sources to reconstruct it in a high-res type of fashion, like you look at the binary sunset, it doesn't look anywhere the same. It doesn't have that purple tones and whatnot that you have in a lot of the other later releases. But still, it's a very good watching experience. Like, one, you don't have that thing in the back of your mind. All those aspect ratios screwing around with me as the film goes along. It's completely consistent throughout the entire film. Like I said, the colors just look a lot more saturated, a lot more rich in a certain way. It's like, it looks really, really good to me. It's a very nice looking transfer. I think it looks really damn good. And just like, it was just a thing. I just ended up finding it randomly somewhere at a shop or whatnot. It's like, that's great, because it's a very particular type of thing. Thanks to Sam Hatch of CultureDog, his YouTube channel, did a video on this a couple of years ago, but he had a copy of it, and he made sure to tell everyone here the telltale signs of it. So One, it has to have Fox Video, not CBS Fox on the jacket, because this is a time where the CBS Fox thing broke up, and now you're back to just the Fox Video. It's not the proper thing to really look for overall, because there were still many Mitsubishi pressings done for the old transfer. What you want to find is on the back of the thing, does it say with the Fox Video logo, made in USA? That's what you want to find. Because the previous ones, like the jackets were done in one country and then the discs were done in another one, so that would not be the thing to jive with. But to be absolutely certain, as Sam Hatch gave off to us, he said that you would have to check on the disc itself, that little ring there. It would have almost like this laser etched type of indicia that would say Technodisc and also say the actual date at which the thing was actually pressed. That's how you know you have a Technodisc pressing. So it's like very rare type of thing to find. Most people don't even know it exists, don't even know what to look for. But thanks to Sam, and now of course myself relaying it to you guys as well, you have all the information to locate that, and you'll be in for a real treat. If you can't get those special collection ones, if you find this one out there, this is a very good one to grab, because it looks great. The sound is still very much digital audio. We can get that Matrix surround sound going on, that whole thing. It's very, very good. Very, very good. But as I said, with CBS Fox getting dissolved and now it's just Fox Video, a couple of things get re-released with nothing new to speak of, just slapping the new logo on the old packaging. Some of the pan-scan Laserdisc in the US and Japan get re-released. Pan-scan VHS gets released, which is the one I have. So it's the Fox Video one, not the CBS Fox one. But all this is kind of moving up to the point in 1993 where the big stuff gets up to talk about. Because we get the Definitive Collection Laserdisc set, which was a big goddamn deal. It's always been kind of a big deal to this massive box set. That even if you go off and try to find it now, the best price I've found for it is $50, which is not bad. There's a lot of things to talk about in terms of like how the transfers on this thing work out, how many times they've been kind of recycled, and the fact that they were actually the bonus discs on the 2006 limited edition DVD sets, where Lucasfilm's like, okay, you want the original versions? Okay, we'll just give you these old Laserdisc transfers from 1993 in 2006. So it's like, people call it the Gout, George official unaltered trilogy, because like that's the most effort he would ever put into it, because he's kind of like disavowed them altogether. But as we get into the Definitive Collection thing, one, THX certified. So they went off, remastered the audio, and did new mixes for them. Because now we go off and do the whole thing where we're going back and like we're taking elements from all the different kind of mixes. Mainly it's like a fold down of the 6-track 70mm stereo thing. But they add a few things in from the mono versions and do different other things they kind of tweaked here and there to kind of like make it the most high dynamic range, the most wide spatial audio possible they could for the time, and make again stereo surround type of things. You could matrix it out with your Dolby Pro Logic and get the most out of it. So on the audio front, I think it was the most pleasing one in a certain way, and though it's been tinkered with and some things a little different here and there, not being able to have much of a problem with the audio on this release. But as you're kind of moving things back around from one mix to the other and kind of combining different things and also removing a few things here and there, C-3PO's line about the tractor being in the first Star Wars is not present in the THX mix. So a lot of little tweaks and changes and stuff like that they kind of made here and there for certain reasons. Some things get reverted when you do other mixes later on for special editions. But as you go into the video on this whole thing, again, you got it remastered where it's like, one, they've done some different things with the colors. Because if you go back and look at the old Laserdisc widescreen or even the pan-scan ones, they have a much warmer tone to them. All of them have very kind of like so much more slight push on the yellows, the oranges, the reds a little bit more, not badly, a little bit more of a push towards that in a certain way. So it's a very kind of like relaxing, kind of muted down type of thing, but as these go into this entire THX box set, the color's a little bit more neutralized. Not in a bad way, it's like it's pushed away from the warmer, a tad bit towards the cooler, but not so much you'd really kind of have a problem with. Not as much as they do on later digital remasters on this entire thing, but a little bit of a neutral color scheme on these entire things. So it's a little bit put towards in the middle of the cold and the warm on this entire thing. So it's the way I've always kind of looked at it. It's a little bit of a neutral type of thing. Like on Empire, hot and warm tones really don't mix that well. So it's like I always kind of liked it where it's like a little bit more pure whites, a little touches of blue on that type of way. So like on Empire, it kind of looked better on the THX ones to my eyes. It kind of felt a little bit more in line with how I kind of felt the film should look in certain places here, but there's a little shifts here and there as you go along throughout the entire course of the trilogy and this whole thing. But the more contentious type of thing is the fact that they applied this very primitive digital noise reduction. Now the fact is, this causes a lot of issues on the entire thing. Where it's like you got a lot of, almost looks like frozen grain, like frozen video noise in a certain way. It was like, feels like the entire thing's kind of glazed over with a certain like Vaseline or something like that, where you got like a lot of frames blending into each other, with like different things kind of like smear from frame to frame. So it's not like terribly sharp or terribly organic as the previous transfers were, but they're trying to smooth out some of the speckles or some of the film grain, stuff like that. So they're trying to smooth over things, but they create new problems when they're trying to fix other problems. So it's like, it's kind of a contentious type of thing in that regard. It's like, it's not the best looking type of thing. So it's like, everyone's kind of like, oh, definitive thing, big box set THX and all this other stuff they have packed in there. Or I'm going to get rid of my other Laserdiscs and all the other transfers where they had, again, different color schemes, but they're much more organic looking transfers, where you got this thing where it's like certain issues on that type of thing. As people go on along with these transfers, they've noticed more and more problems with it in terms of those more primitive methods of processing it after the fact. But this entire box set, as you get into extras here, is kind of an interesting type of thing where it's like, they got a lot of things listed on it, but it's like, it's not a lot of beefy types of things. So they got a lot of interviews with like Ben Burt working on the sound. You got Dennis Muren talking about visual effects. You got all these different people involved in the whole thing. Even George himself talking about various other things in the creative process of the entire trilogy. Just talking about various different things, but they're very snippet type of interviews. They're not dealing with like a full-length documentary or something like that. We kind of look over to something like what Fox was doing with stuff with James Cameron, doing stuff with The Abyss and Aliens, and then later on he does the box sets for T2, which are very in-depth, like very much like the pinnacle of what you could do on Laserdisc, beefy extras, full-length documentaries, very informative commentary tracks. Commentary tracks reportedly on the definitive collection set are very sparse. It's not like wall-to-wall information. It's like, they'll have some stuff here pulled in from an interview. It's all like scene-specific type of things. Particularly, they didn't sit down and watch the film, commented on as you do as a regular commentary. They probably took snippets from different interviews and kind of spliced them in where they seemed appropriate as you go along on the film. So it's like, wasn't the absolute beefiest type of things, but they had stuff like toward the Lucasfilm archives. They had still galleries. They had all the trailers for the entire films, and various other little things like they had that Lap T Neck Return of the Jedi music video, which kind of made the rounds a little bit back in the days, but not that much. So it also contains a different mix of the entire thing that you could find on my anthology soundtrack box set back here, but it's kind of a nice collection of different things that no one had ever gotten before. So at the time, it probably felt very exciting. And this thing just came packaged in this really beautiful black and silver basic type of box set, but it's like, it was really good, real heavy, because everything was done CAV, so you got a lot of discs in there, a lot of different sides, and of course you got the Creative Impulse book, the hardback version, the complete version of it. So you got quite a bit of bang for buck for what you're paying on this thing. You know, if the extras in retrospect seem very sparse and not as high quality or in depth as you possibly could get, a lot of people are very excited for it at the time. But you have some problems with some of the pressings on this whole thing, because the US version had the disc pressed from Pioneer Japan. But on one of the sites for The Empire Strikes Back, you're missing 7 seconds worth of footage. And it's probably, I think that's about the only real problem with it, but they did end up correcting it with the Mitsubishi pressing later on, which had problems with disc rot. So it's like, if they didn't press the disc quite right, or didn't have the right glue on there, or something like that, with the two sides pressed together, air gets in there, oxidates the glue, and so creates a different problem for the laser not to be able to read the disc properly, because it starts rotting from the inside, and now you got a problem with the entire thing. But I think the one from Japan just kind of cleared up all these different problems. Even though it now has Japanese subtitles on it, some people prefer to track down that version. was kind of an interesting thing. And though the first version they put on in Japan does have the Creative Impulse book, when they reissue it in 1995, they took the book out and put in Laserdisc versions of The Making of Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back SPFX, and Return of the Jedi Classic Creatures. So these all debuted both in this box set version and as individual releases. So I think that beefs it up a lot more. So if people are looking for like the ultimate version, I think that would be the one to grab, because that gives you like the most you could possibly want. You got all the little interviews and stuff like that in the regular version, but then you get 3 full, like almost hour and a half documentaries dedicated to each different film. And of course, from Star Wars, The Jedi was already out in Laserdisc in Japan at that point in time for a very long time there. So if you grabbed all that stuff up, there's like you've got a mega box set to a certain degree here that is very pleasing. But as you get into the fact that as the 90s are going on, George is kind of the wheels are starting to spin on different things. One, the prequels, all that type of stuff kind of eventually starts getting to his brain, and he's starting to do a little bit of prep here and there. And the fact is, like, he's thinking about as things are getting along with the digital technology and things are getting up to a certain point. After you got T2, you got Jurassic Park, you can see that ILM is progressing to a point where they can potentially realize certain things with the original trilogy he couldn't do at the time. So it's like he's starting to think like, I could probably do some other versions. We can go back to the negatives and do other things. So it's like they're part of this one last marketing campaign for a re-release of those THX remasters in 1995. Now they're finally putting these out on VHS, both pan scan and widescreen letterbox versions. So they put out this entire marketing campaign saying, one last time. If you want to grab these versions, this is the last time we're ever going to put them out in these versions, because the word is already out. Special editions are coming. So much so that when these got released on VHS in 95, I thought these were the special editions. So I went off the Blockbuster Video, rented them all, got them home. Was like, well, there's nothing different here. So I was like, okay, well, I just rented the same things I basically already have on VHS. They just look a lot better. But there's a lot of different things involved in the whole thing, where it's like, okay, those get re-released on Laserdisc as well in CLV format, as these sort of like, the new cover art is like, they call it the Faces version, obviously because they use the faces of Darth Vader, Stormtrooper, and Yoda. And so they're using like Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford, where they don't have to pay those royalties off to them. They use their licenses again. So the whole thing is like, they didn't really do a whole lot in terms of like making anything new, but they did have at the beginning of these new letterbox VHS tapes and the new Faces Laserdisc versions, you'd have these sit-down interviews between Leonard Maltin and George Lucas, talking about different things in the entire process of making each film. So each film had a little interview at the beginning of the entire thing, that he went into certain details about certain things before he went into the film proper. So it's like kind of an interesting type of thing. It's like they kept pushing it out and telling him this is the last time it's ever going to happen. So it's like there's a lot of fervor going on at the time, because like, again, you're getting these interviews and little things out in the magazines and all these different things. Like, things are starting to progress to a certain point. There's something new on the horizon coming up. People are very excited for it. They got the entire campaign saying one last time. So it's like you can see, you can find those pan scan box set all over the place. I see them all over the place all the time. I very much like what they did with the letterbox VHS set. It's like it's a very nice, simple type of thing. It's a nice vinyl black set. It's like there's no additional tapes or anything like that. But it's like it's just this nice, sleek type of thing. It slides out. It's a nice vinyl type of packaging to a certain degree. It's very, very sleek and nice. I just very much like the look of it overall. It's nice, simple packaging that works very much on a marketing level. I like it so much. And even in Japan, they took the CLV THX versions and put them in their own box set as well. Well, they went from Star Wars, The Jedi. So it's a nice white and gold packaging. So they never put the CLV ones in a box set in the US. They're just straight individual releases. So it's like Japan was always going a little bit further with things. A little bit ahead of the curve at first to get the digital audio, the widescreen versions done. They did the right things with the Definitive Collection one almost twice over, re-releasing it with the extra discs and stuff like that. They're just Japan on the Laserdisc front was always phenomenal. Just like they're always so good. So many of their transfers, so many of their discs, so many of their pressings were just exceptional quality. People always hold them up to such a high regard. Maybe a few of them fall off here and there, but the general consensus is Japan made some fantastic Laserdiscs and sometimes were very much ahead of what the U.S. market was doing. And so these original versions of the Star Wars trilogy, even though you have different versions with different mixes and stuff like that, and different transfers here and there that may not be fully representative of the original theatrical versions, fact of the matter is pre-special edition stuff is such a off-market type of thing. It's such a frustrating thing, but it's one of the things that has partly kept Laserdisc very vital to the entire home video market, despite the fact that no one's made a new Laserdisc in 20 years. Still, that makes that collector's market very vital. It's one of the things is why I wanted to get Laserdisc in the first place, to get those versions in the best quality possible from a commercial official release. Because as we go forward into 1997, George starts making non-stop changes to these films in 97, 2004, 2011. Even the 4K versions have additional changes done to them. They're a compulsive thing where he can't stop tweaking them. And so it's like this entire process is like, it frustrates everyone. Because all people want is an option. Don't just like, here's all you have, the rest of it goes away. Because you look at all these different things. You got Blade Runner. It's got 5 different versions out on Blu-ray. You can watch the theatrical U.S. print, the international cut, the director's cut, the final cut, or even the work print version. Star Trek The Motion Picture just now is getting a 4K remastered version of the director's edition, along with the theatrical cut, and now this special longer version that was only available previously on a pan and scan VHS tape or a Laserdisc that aired years ago on freaking ABC. And so many different things, like there's all these things, even like the Alien box set. You got original theatrical cuts and you got extended versions. All people want is an option. Give them an option to watch whichever version that is officially been made and allow them to make their decision about which one they like. But George is so possessive of all these things and so obsessed about compulsively, just like nothing is exactly the way I want it. I just keep futzing with it. The audio keeps getting changed. The mixes keep getting changed. He's making digital alterations over and over again. Things are just like almost insanity how much keeps getting changed over the course of time. That just makes the original theatrical versions much more valuable. So that's why you have preservation going on. People tracking down theatrical film prints or any film elements possible to scan in, stitch together, restore, and do all these great things. Or stuff like you go in and take all the available official releases, try to AI upscale things and try to mask things off and cut them up and do all these different things to color match and all these different things to really make the most definitive preservation possible of these things. Track down every source you can from different audio mixes released and all these different things to combine them and make the ultimate mega thing that the official people who own the rights just have not given us yet. And it's just very, very frustrating, thus making all these old VHS versions, the latest versions, so coveted. That's why they go for such high prices. That's why the special collection editions go for $100, $200, some odd dollars, because people know there's a market for it. People actually desperately want to have these original versions in very good audio, very good video presentation for what they are on the formats, and people have all these elaborate systems for the Laserdisc stuff to get the best audio, tweak the picture the best way, upscale the best possible way onto either CRTs or HD monitors or something like that. Everything possible. Everything is just involved in this entire thing to make the most out of these formats, because there's so many things available on those formats that have not been re-released on HD formats or anything else that resembles any sort of modern quality of a home theater experience. And so all these early versions that, even though they have audio changes here and there and the colors kind of shift in some places as they remaster them, they still present them so much in such a way that is nostalgic, but also preserves those versions that won the Oscars, made these some of the most popular films of all time, broke box office records, all these different things. it deserves preservation, and it's such a thing that they haven't been preserved as well as they should be. So what you want to go back to are these releases, these VHS, the Laserdisc, even those 2006 DVDs that just port over the non-anamorphic Laserdisc transfers. You just go for what you can grab, because if you want to experience the best possible quality, you got to go in some subversive places online to get these like restorations done, or hunt down these other formats and get these old players and stuff like that and enjoy them as best you can. It's a very frustrating thing, but hopefully I brought a little, again, nuance to what all these different releases have to offer, and some of the pitfalls of some of the ones that didn't get manufactured quite the right ways. But that's where I want to leave things off for now, because the special editions really do require a heft of research and really don't deserve to be rushed through or shortchanged in any type of way. There's a lot of detail to get into on those special editions, and so we'll see where that goes in the future. But guys, if you own any of these versions, which one do you prefer the most? Do you prefer the THX ones? Do you have the earlier ones that have much more organic look to them, stuff like that? What do you think of the special features on the Definitive Collection set? Are they little sparse? Because I found out that even the official Star Wars YouTube channel uploaded a lot of those Definitive Collection extras that they run a couple of minutes a piece. They're not all that interesting in terms of what I'm looking for in this day and age, when you got a lot of other more insightful documentaries since then. And of course, of the time too, all those ones that were put on the Japanese set were far more investing and far more engaging and far more informative than what these little interview snippets really gave. So they're little breadcrumbs put on the table, not a full meal that really gets you packed into a full type of thing. But let me know what you guys feel about this whole thing, and I'll get you around soon. And there will be a special edition Laserdisc discussion at some point in time. But for now, I'll leave it at this. So guys, thanks much. Take care.